The pharmacist asked, "Your medication was changed." That's when I knew my caregiver lied. The pharmacy counter felt cold against my palms as I leaned forward, squinting at the bottle in Margaret's hand. Something was wrong. The pills inside were white, not the familiar blue capsules I'd been taking for my heart condition for the past 3 years. "Mrs. Chen," Margaret said gently, her voice carrying that careful tone people use when they think you might not understand. "Your medication was changed from Coroner to metoprolol." "When did Dr. Martinez make the switch?" My stomach dropped. "He didn't." Margaret's eyebrows knitted together as she glanced at her computer screen, then back at me. "According to our records, your caregiver," she checked the notes, "Sandra Williams picked up this prescription yesterday. She said the doctor wanted to try something different because the coroner wasn't working well enough." The words hit me like ice water. Sandra had been with me for 8 months now, hired through Premier Care Services after my daughter Lisa insisted I needed help following my early-stage dementia diagnosis. Sandra had become more than just hired help. She was the one who made my morning coffee exactly how I liked it, who laughed at my old stories even when I repeated them, who held my hand during those frightening moments when my mind felt foggy and uncertain. "Mrs. Chen?" Margaret's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you all right?" I forced myself to focus. "The coroner costs about $400 a month, doesn't it?" "Yes, it's quite expensive. This metoprolol is much more affordable, only about $30. Margaret paused, studying my face. "Mrs. Chen, if you didn't authorize this change, we need to call Dr. Martinez right now." My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. Margaret helped me dial the cardiology office, and within minutes, we had Dr. Martinez's nurse on speakerphone. "Absolutely not," Nurse Patricia said firmly. "Dr. Martinez never changed Mrs. Chen's prescription. In fact, her last appointment showed the coroner was working perfectly. Her heart rhythm has been stable for months." The room started to spin slightly. Sandra had been managing all my medications for the past 6 months, organizing my pill organizer every Sunday evening, bringing me my morning and evening doses with a glass of water and a warm smile. How many times had she told me, "Time for your heart medicine, Eleanor," while handing me pills that weren't even the right medication? Margaret was already typing rapidly on her keyboard. "Mrs. Chen, I'm looking at your prescription history. This is the 3rd medication that's been switched in the past 2 months. Your diabetes medication was changed from Jardiance to regular metformin, and your arthritis prescription was downgraded from Humira injections to basic ibuprofen." Each word felt like a physical blow. The Jardiance cost nearly $500 monthly. The Humira injections were over $3,000. I thought about how my blood sugar had been more erratic lately, how my joint pain had gotten worse. Sandra had been so sympathetic, suggesting maybe it was just the dementia making me more sensitive to discomfort. "We need to report this immediately," Margaret said, reaching for the pharmacy phone. "This is medication fraud, and it's putting your health in serious danger." I stared at the white pills in the bottle, thinking about Sandra's concerned face this morning when she'd asked if I was feeling okay, how she'd squeezed my shoulder and called me sweetie like I was her own grandmother. The betrayal felt worse than the theft. "Wait," I said, placing my hand over Margaret's as she reached for the phone. My mind was racing, pieces clicking together like a jigsaw puzzle I'd been unknowingly solving for months. "Before we call anyone, I need to understand how deep this goes." Margaret paused, her finger hovering over the keypad. "Mrs. Chen, we really should. Please. Just give me a minute." I pulled out my wallet with trembling fingers and found the small notebook I always carried, a habit I developed since my diagnosis to help remember important things. "Margaret, can you print out my complete prescription history for the past year?" While she worked at the computer, I flipped through my notebook pages. There, in my own handwriting, March 15th, joint pain much worse, mentioned to Sandra. March 22nd, Sandra says Dr. Rodriguez wants to try different arthritis medicine, *. My stomach clenched. I'd never spoken to Dr. Rodriguez about changing anything. April 8th, blood sugar 180 after breakfast, Sandra concerned. April 12th, Sandra picked up new diabetes medicine, says it's newer and better. Margaret handed me 3 printed pages. Here's everything from January to now. The pattern was unmistakable. Every expensive medication had been systematically replaced with cheaper alternatives over the past 4 months. But it was the dates that made my blood run cold. Each switch happened exactly 2 weeks after I'd mentioned feeling unwell to Sandra, symptoms that were likely caused by the inferior medications she'd already substituted. "My God," I whispered. "She's been creating a paper trail. Making it look like the medications weren't working so the switches would seem legitimate." Margaret leaned closer, reading over my shoulder. "Look at this pattern. She always calls the doctor's office claiming to be you, saying you're having side effects or the medication isn't working. Then she requests the changes." I felt sick. The doctors never spoke to me directly? "These notes show the requests came through the main office line, and Sandra provided your insurance information and date of birth to verify identity. Legally, that was sufficient for most of these changes." Margaret's voice grew angry. She knew exactly how to work the system. The pharmacy's automatic doors chimed, and I looked up to see Sandra walking in, her familiar warm smile brightening when she spotted me. She was wearing the turquoise cardigan I bought her last month for her birthday, or what she'd told me was her birthday. Now I wondered if anything she'd ever told me was true. "Eleanor. There you are, sweetie." She approached with her usual confident stride, car keys jingling in her hand. "I was worried when I couldn't find you in the medicine aisle. What are you doing at the pharmacy counter?" Margaret and I exchanged a quick glance. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure Sandra could hear it. "Oh, just asking Margaret about my new heart medication," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "The white pills instead of the blue ones." Sandra's smile never wavered, but I caught something, a tiny flicker in her eyes, like a shadow passing across a window. "Yes, wasn't it wonderful that Dr. Martinez found something that works just as well but costs so much less? More money for those books you love buying." The casual lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly. She'd had months of practice. "You're so good to me, Sandra," I said, forcing myself to smile back. "I don't know what I'd do without you managing everything." Behind Sandra's back, Margaret was quietly sliding the prescription printouts into an envelope. I was going to need proof of everything. The drive home felt endless. Sandra chatted about her weekend plans, something about visiting her sister in Phoenix, while I sat in the passenger seat clutching the envelope Margaret had given me. Every few minutes, Sandra would glance at me with those concerned brown eyes that I'd once found so comforting. "You're quiet today, Eleanor. Are you feeling all right?" Sometimes new medications can make people feel off at first. New medications. The lie came so naturally to her. "I'm fine, dear. Just thinking about my appointment with Dr. Martinez next week." I watched her hands tighten almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel. "Oh, that's right. Tuesday at 10:30. She paused. "Would you like me to call and reschedule? Sometimes these appointments can be overwhelming, especially with your memory issues getting worse." My memory issues getting worse. Another lie, carefully planted. The truth was, my dementia symptoms had actually been more manageable lately, probably because I'd been unconsciously compensating for the medication problems she'd created. When we got home, Sandra busied herself in the kitchen making lunch while I sat at my dining room table, staring at the envelope. My hands shook as I opened it and spread out the papers Margaret had printed. The numbers were staggering. My original monthly prescriptions: Corliner $394, Jardiance $487, Humira $3,240. Total, $4,121. The substituted medications: metoprolol $28, regular metformin $31, ibuprofen $8. Total, $67. Over 4 months, Sandra had pocketed approximately $16,216 worth of my medications. But it was worse than simple theft. I pulled out my blood pressure log, another habit I'd maintained religiously. Since the Corliner switch, my readings had climbed from a healthy 118/78 to dangerous levels around 165/95. Dr. Martinez would be horrified. "Lunch is ready." Sandra called cheerfully from the kitchen. I quickly slipped the papers back into the envelope and tucked it under a stack of crossword puzzle books. As I stood, I caught sight of myself in the hall mirror. When had I started looking so frail? My cheeks were hollow, my skin pale. I'd attributed it to getting older, but now I wondered if it was the result of months of receiving inadequate medical treatment. Sandra had prepared my favorite, tomato soup and grilled cheese, but suddenly the smell made me nauseous. She sat across from me, her face radiating the same warmth it always had. "Eleanor, I've been thinking. Maybe we should organize your medications differently. Keep them in my room instead of the kitchen counter. Sometimes you seem confused about which pills to take when." My spoon froze halfway to my mouth. "Confused? Well, yesterday you asked me 3 times about your evening pills. And last week you couldn't remember if you'd taken your morning dose." Her voice was gentle, patient. "It's completely normal with your condition, but I worry about you accidentally double dosing." I had never asked about pills 3 times. I had perfect recall of taking my medications because it was part of my structured routine. But if Sandra controlled when and where I accessed them, she could manipulate my memory of the events later. "That's very thoughtful," I heard myself say. "You're probably right." After lunch, Sandra excused herself to run errands. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I was on the phone with my daughter Lisa in Seattle. "Mom? Is everything okay? You sound upset." "Lisa, I need you to listen carefully." I told her everything: the pharmacy discovery, the medication switches, the money involved. By the time I finished, Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "Mom, are you sure? I mean, Sandra has been so wonderful. She sends me updates every week about how you're doing. She's the one who convinced you to see Dr. Martinez more regularly." My blood went cold. "She's been contacting you?" "Of course. We arranged it when I hired her. She calls every Sunday evening to let me know how your week went, what symptoms you've had, whether your confusion is getting worse." Sandra had been carefully managing the narrative with my own daughter, painting me as increasingly incompetent while positioning herself as the devoted caregiver holding everything together. I was more trapped than I'd realized. "Lisa, what exactly has Sandra been telling you about me?" My voice was barely above a whisper as I gripped the phone tighter. "Well, she's been concerned about your declining memory. Last month she said you left the stove on twice and couldn't remember doing it. 2 weeks ago, she mentioned you'd gotten lost walking to Mrs. Patterson's house, 3 doors down where you'd been going for coffee every Tuesday for 5 years. None of that had happened. Not once. She also said you've been having trouble managing your checkbook, so she's been helping you pay bills." "Mom, I thought it was wonderful that you had someone so caring looking out for you." My hands started trembling. "Lisa, I need you to call my bank right now. Check my account activity for the past 4 months. Mom, I can't just. Please. I'm going to give you my account information. This is important." While Lisa called the bank from her office in Seattle, I sat at my kitchen table, methodically going through my own records. My checkbook was meticulous. I'd been balancing accounts for 43 years as a bookkeeper, and dementia hadn't changed my systematic nature. But when I compared my records to my bank statements, there were discrepancies. Small ones, but consistent. An extra $50 here and there on grocery receipts. Gas station charges when Sandra claimed she'd paid with her own card and I'd reimbursed her cash. A $200 withdrawal from an ATM I'd never used, with a note in Sandra's handwriting: "Eleanor needed cash for church donation." I never donated cash to my church. Everything went through checks for tax purposes. My phone rang. Lisa's voice was tight. "Mom, there have been 17 ATM withdrawals in the past 3 months from locations all over the city. Total of $3,400. And there are automatic payments set up for 3 credit cards I didn't know you had." "I don't have 3 credit cards. The bank says they were opened with your social security number and identification. All the statements are going to a P.O. box downtown." Lisa paused. "Mom, I think Sandra has been using your identity." Before I could respond, I heard Sandra's car in the driveway. "Lisa, she's back. I have to go." "Mom, don't hang up. We need to call the police right now." "Not yet. I need more proof, and I need to be smart about this. She's been planning this for months. She'll have covered her tracks." I peeked through the window blind. Sandra was pulling shopping bags from her trunk, whistling. "If we move too fast, she'll destroy evidence or disappear. Then I'm flying down there tomorrow." No. If you suddenly show up, she'll know something's wrong. My mind was racing. Give me until Friday. But Lisa, I need you to do something. Call Premier Care Services and ask about Sandra's employment history. Find out how many other clients she's had. After hanging up, I quickly put away my papers just as Sandra walked through the front door, arms full of Target bags. I picked up some things for you, Eleanor. She seemed particularly cheerful, almost giddy. New lavender body wash, I know how much you love that scent, and some of those crossword puzzle books you enjoy. She was spending my stolen money on gifts for me. The psychological manipulation was breathtaking. You're so thoughtful, dear. I managed to smile while she unpacked items on the counter. Sandra, can I ask you something? Of course, anything. How many other clients have you worked with through Premier Care? You're so good at this, I imagine you've helped lots of families. Something shifted in her expression, so quickly I almost missed it. Oh, just a few. You're definitely my favorite though. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Most families aren't as welcoming as you've been. I'd love to meet some of them sometime. Compare notes about how wonderful you are. Sandra's hand stilled on the Target bag. Well, confidentiality rules, you know. Client privacy and all that. She turned away, busying herself with folding the empty bags. Plus, most of my previous clients have passed on or moved to assisted living. The room felt suddenly cold. How many vulnerable elderly people had Sandra systematically robbed before me? And what had happened to them when they became inconvenient? That evening, as Sandra prepared my medication organizer for the week, I watched her carefully. She laid out 7 days' worth of pills with practiced efficiency, chatting about a cooking show she wanted us to watch together. The white metoprolol pills went into Monday through Sunday's morning slots where my blue Corliner used to be. There we go, she said, snapping the organizer shut. All set for another week. I was looking at the evidence of a crime, committed right in front of me with a smile. That night, I lay awake listening to Sandra move around the house. At 2:17 a.m., I heard her bedroom door creak open. Soft footsteps padded down the hallway toward the kitchen, then stopped outside my room. I forced my breathing to stay deep and even, feigning sleep. After what felt like hours, the footsteps retreated. A few minutes later, I heard the unmistakable sound of pill bottles rattling, followed by the gentle snap of my medication organizer being opened and closed. She was switching out tomorrow's pills. The next morning, Sandra brought me my usual Monday medications with orange juice and toast. Here we go, sweetie. Your heart medicine and the rest. I palmed the white pill instead of swallowing it, tucking it under my tongue while I drank the juice. Thank you, dear. I don't know what I'd do without you keeping track of everything. That's what I'm here for. She squeezed my shoulder affectionately. I'm going to run some errands this morning. Will you be okay for a few hours? The moment her car disappeared down Maple Street, I spit the metoprolol into a tissue and called Margaret at the pharmacy. Mrs. Chen? How are you feeling today? Margaret, I need to ask you something confidential. Has Sandra picked up my real medications recently? The expensive ones? Papers rustled on her end. Actually, yes. She collected your Corliner refill on Saturday morning. Said you were having breakthrough symptoms and Dr. Martinez wanted you back on the original prescription. My heart hammered against my ribs. So she has both medications now. It appears so. Mrs. Chen, what's going on? She's been giving me the cheap substitutes while keeping the real medications for herself. I think she's selling them. I walked to my kitchen window, scanning the street nervously. Margaret, is there a way to track where prescription medications end up? If they're being sold illegally, that would be a DEA matter. But Mrs. Chen, you need to report this to the police today. What she's doing could kill you. After hanging up, I searched Sandra's room for the first time in 8 months. I felt sick violating her privacy, but I had to know the truth. Her dresser drawers held the usual items, clothes, jewelry, personal effects. But tucked behind her sweater collection, I found a small lockbox. The combination was easy to guess, her supposed birthday, which I now doubted was real. Inside were pill bottles with my name on them, nearly full. Corliner, Jardiance, Humira. Thousands of dollars worth of medications I should have been taking. But that wasn't the worst discovery. Underneath the pill bottles was a manila folder containing photocopies of my identification documents, bank statements, and social security card. There were handwritten notes in Sandra's careful script, *E becoming more suspicious. May need to accelerate timeline. Asterisk and below that, asterisk contact Phoenix buyer for bulk sale. Clear remaining inventory by month end. Asterisk. My legs gave out. I sat heavily on Sandra's bed, staring at the evidence that I was nothing more than inventory to be cleared out. The folder contained business cards for 3 different home healthcare agencies. Sandra Williams wasn't even her real name. The card showed Susan Valdez, Sarah Ward, and Stephanie Voss. How many identities did she have? How many families had she destroyed? At the bottom of the folder was a photograph that made my blood freeze. Sandra stood next to an elderly man in a wheelchair, both smiling at the camera. But I recognized the man from a newspaper clipping paperclipped to the photo. Asterisk local widower Harold McKinnon, 72, found dead in home after apparent heart attack. McKinnon's family questions missing medications. Asterisk. Sandra had killed before. I heard her car pulling into the driveway. Frantically, I shoved everything back into the lockbox, reset the combination, and replaced it behind the sweaters. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped her lamp getting out of the room. Eleanor? I'm back. Sandra's voice rang through the house, cheerful as always. I barely made it to my chair in the living room before she found me, arms full of grocery bags and wearing that warm smile that now looked like a predator's grin. How are you feeling, sweetie? You look a little pale. She was right. I probably looked terrified. Because now I knew I was living with a murderer. I'm fine, just a little tired, I managed, forcing my hands to stop shaking as Sandra set down the grocery bags. Did you have a good morning? Oh yes, very productive. She began unpacking items, her movements casual and unhurried. I stopped by that new farmer's market downtown, picked up some fresh vegetables for dinner tonight. She held up a bunch of carrots. And I ran into the sweetest woman at the checkout. Turns out she used to work at Premier Care Services too. My mouth went dry. Really? What a coincidence. Janet something. She mentioned she'd heard wonderful things about the care you've been receiving. Sandra's eyes met mine briefly. It's nice to know our little arrangement is working out so well for everyone. The way she said arrangement made my skin crawl. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but really I needed to call Lisa immediately. With trembling fingers, I dialed her number while running the faucet to mask my voice. Mom? You sound awful. Lisa, listen carefully, I whispered. I found evidence in her room. She's done this before. There was a photo of another elderly man who died. Harold McKinnon, does that name mean anything to you? Hold on, I'm Googling. A pause. Oh my God, Mom. Harold McKinnon died 6 months ago in Phoenix. His family sued Premier Care Services claiming his medications were tampered with, but the case was dismissed due to lack of evidence. She's going to kill me, Lisa. There were notes about clearing inventory by month end. My voice cracked. And she's not Sandra Williams, she has multiple fake identities. I'm calling the police right now. Wait. I could hear Sandra humming in the kitchen, the sound of vegetables being chopped. If we call police now, she'll know someone tipped them off. She might run, or worse, she might decide to speed up whatever she's planning for me. Mom, you can't stay there. I have to. But I need you to do something. I gripped the phone tighter. Call Premier Care Services and find out exactly when Harold McKinnon died, and get the contact information for his family. And Lisa, see if there were any other suspicious deaths connected to their caregivers in the past year. After hanging up, I splashed cold water on my face and tried to compose myself. When I returned to the living room, Sandra was arranging fresh flowers in my favorite vase. Eleanor, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about organizing your medications better. She didn't look up from the flowers. I really think we should move them to my room tonight. Sometimes I worry you might get confused in the middle of the night and take too many pills. There it was, the next step in isolating me from my own medical care. That's probably wise, I said, hating how easily the lie came. My memory does seem to be getting worse. Sandra's smile was radiant. You're so understanding. Not all my clients have been this cooperative when their conditions started declining. Clients, plural. Past tense. Sandra, can I ask you something personal? Do you ever worry about getting attached to your clients, knowing that, well, that elderly care situations don't always last forever? She paused, a white rose halfway to the vase. It's part of the job, Eleanor. You learn not to get too emotionally invested. Her voice took on a strange, flat quality. People pass on, or their families move them to facilities. The important thing is making sure they're comfortable in their final months. Final months. The words hung in the air like a threat. That afternoon, while Sandra was doing laundry, I called Margaret at the pharmacy again. Mrs. Chen, I was hoping you'd call. I did some checking on Sandra Williams in our system. She's picked up medications for 4 different elderly patients in the past 18 months, all using different insurance cards but the same ID number. 4 patients? Harold McKinnon was one of them. The others were Dorothy Vance, Eugene Foster, and Maria Santos. Mrs. Chen, all 4 of these people died within 6 months of Sandra becoming their caregiver. The room started spinning. Margaret, I need you to document everything. Print out all the records, all the prescription changes, everything. I already have. And Mrs. Chen? I called Dr. Martinez's office. He wants to see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., emergency appointment. He's very concerned about your heart medication being switched without his authorization. Tomorrow morning. Could I survive that long? As evening approached, I watched Sandra prepare dinner with new eyes. She moved through my kitchen like she owned it, chatting about her plans to redecorate the guest bathroom, talking about spring plantings for the garden. Making long-term plans for a house that would soon be hers if I died of natural causes like the others. Sandra, do you have family nearby? You never talk much about your personal life. Not really, she said, stirring soup on the stove. I'm pretty much on my own. That's why this job means so much to me. You become like family, Eleanor. Family that she was systematically poisoning and robbing. After dinner, Sandra collected my medication organizer from the kitchen counter. Let me just move this to my room for safekeeping. I watched her walk away with the pills that were supposed to keep me alive, knowing that whatever she brought me tomorrow morning might be my last dose of anything. But I had a plan now. And Sandra had no idea that her confused, helpless elderly victim was about to fight back. That night, I lay in bed listening to every sound in the house. At 1:47 a.m., I heard Sandra's door creak open, followed by soft footsteps padding toward the kitchen. My heart hammered as I recognized the now familiar sound of pill bottles being opened and medications being switched out for tomorrow morning. I waited until her footsteps retreated, then slipped out of bed and tiptoed to my closet. Hidden behind my winter coats was the small voice recorder I'd found in my junk drawer earlier, a relic from my bookkeeping days when I used to dictate notes. The battery still worked. The next morning, Sandra appeared at my bedside at exactly 8 a.m. with my daily medications and a glass of orange juice. Good morning, sweetie. Time for your pills. I slipped the tiny recorder into my bathrobe pocket and pressed record. Thank you, dear. These are my heart medications, right? Of course. Same as always. She handed me 3 pills, 2 white ones and a small yellow tablet I didn't recognize. Sandra, I'm feeling a bit confused this morning. Could you remind me what each one is for? Her smile never wavered. The white ones are for your heart, and the yellow is your new blood pressure medicine. Dr. Martinez wanted to add it because your numbers have been running high. Every word was a lie. I palmed all 3 pills while pretending to swallow them with the juice. You know, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about my memory getting worse, I said, keeping my voice uncertain and frail. Maybe you should handle more of my affairs. The checkbook, maybe even talking to my doctors directly. Sandra's eyes lit up. That's very wise, Eleanor. These medical appointments can be so overwhelming when your mind isn't as sharp as it used to be. Would you be willing to come to my appointment with Dr. Martinez this morning? I might not remember everything he says. Absolutely. In fact, why don't I do most of the talking? I've been monitoring your symptoms much more closely than you have. Perfect. I needed her to lie to Dr. Martinez while I was recording. We arrived at Dr. Martinez's office at 8:45 a.m. Sandra positioned herself in the chair next to the examination table, a thick folder in her lap that I'd never seen before. When Dr. Martinez entered, his face was grim. "Mrs. Chen, I understand there's been some confusion about your medications." Before I could answer, Sandra leaned forward. "Doctor, Eleanor has been having significant memory issues lately. She's been forgetting to take her pills, sometimes taking double doses. I had to make some emergency decisions about her prescriptions to keep her safe." Dr. Martinez frowned, checking his chart. "Ms. Williams, I don't have any record of you calling our office to discuss medication changes. I spoke with your nurse, Patricia, several times. Eleanor was having chest pains and confusion with the coroner, so we switched her to metoprolol temporarily." Sandra's voice was confident, professional. "I have documentation of all her symptoms and episodes." She opened her folder and pulled out handwritten logs that looked remarkably official. Dates, times, detailed descriptions of symptoms I'd never experienced. According to this, Mrs. Chen had 3 episodes of severe chest pain in the past month, Dr. Martinez read from Sandra's notes. "Eleanor, do you remember these incidents?" I let myself look confused and uncertain. I'm not sure. Some days are clearer than others." Sandra reached over and squeezed my hand. "It's okay, sweetie. That's why you have me to keep track of everything." Dr. Martinez's expression grew more troubled as he reviewed the falsified records. "These symptoms are concerning, but I should have been consulted before any medication changes were made." "Of course, doctor. I was just trying to prevent an emergency situation. You know how these elderly patients can be, sometimes they don't want to worry their doctors with every little complaint." The casual way she dismissed me as these elderly patients while sitting right next to me was breathtaking. I made sure the recorder was still running. "Ms. Williams, what's your medical background? Are you a licensed nurse?" "I have extensive experience in elderly care through Premier Care Services. 8 years of working with clients who have dementia and cardiac issues." Another lie. I knew from my research that Harold McKinnon died only 6 months ago, and the other victims went back less than 2 years. Dr. Martinez turned to me. "Eleanor, I'd like to run some tests today. Blood work and EKG, check how you're responding to these medication changes." Sandra's posture stiffened slightly. "Doctor, Eleanor gets very anxious about medical procedures. Maybe we should schedule that for another day when she's feeling stronger." "No, I think we should do it now." Dr. Martinez was studying Sandra with new interest. "Mrs. Chen, are you comfortable with having blood drawn today?" "Yes," I said quickly, before Sandra could object again. "I want to make sure everything's working properly." While the nurse prepared for the blood draw, Sandra excused herself to make a phone call. I seized the opportunity. "Dr. Martinez," I whispered urgently, "the medications she's been giving me aren't what you prescribed. She's been stealing my real prescriptions and substituting cheaper alternatives." His eyebrows shot up. "Eleanor, are you certain? Sometimes dementia can cause confusion about." "I'm not confused about this. Check with Margaret at Patterson Pharmacy. She has all the records." I glanced toward the door nervously. "And doctor, I think Sandra has done this before. To other patients who died." Dr. Martinez stared at me for a long moment, then quietly picked up his phone and dialed. "Margaret? This is Dr. Martinez. I have Eleanor Chen here, and I need to ask you about some prescription irregularities." Through the phone, I could hear Margaret's voice explaining about the unauthorized medication switches, the pattern of expensive drugs being replaced with cheaper alternatives, the suspicious timing of everything. When Sandra returned, Dr. Martinez's demeanor had completely changed. "Ms. Williams, there seems to be some discrepancy in Mrs. Chen's prescription records. Would you mind waiting in the lobby while I complete her examination? I really should stay with Eleanor. She gets disoriented without me." "I insist." His voice carried an authority that brooked no argument. After Sandra reluctantly left, Dr. Martinez closed the door and turned to me. "Eleanor, how long has this been going on?" I pulled out the voice recorder. "Everything we need is right here." The blood test results came back within an hour, and Dr. Martinez's face was grave as he reviewed them. "Eleanor, your heart medication levels are dangerously low, barely detectable. If you'd been taking the Coroner as prescribed, these numbers would be significantly higher." I felt vindicated and terrified at the same time. "So the metoprolol she's been giving me isn't adequate for your condition. Your ejection fraction could be compromised." He made notes in my chart with sharp, angry strokes. "We need to get you back on your proper medications immediately, and we need to involve the authorities." Through the examination room window, I could see Sandra in the waiting area, scrolling through her phone with apparent casualness. But I noticed she positioned herself where she could see the hallway, watching for my exit. "Doctor, I need to be very careful about how we handle this. If Sandra suspects I've figured out what she's doing." I thought about Harold McKinnon's photograph, about the notes mentioning an accelerated timeline. "I think she's killed before. I found evidence in her room." Dr. Martinez stopped writing. "Eleanor, if you're in immediate danger, we should call the police right now. She's too smart. She's been planning this for months, building a paper trail that makes me look increasingly confused and incompetent. If we move too fast, she'll destroy evidence or disappear." I leaned forward. "But I have a plan. Can you write me a prescription for my real medications and give them to me directly? Don't put it through the pharmacy system where she can intercept it." He hesitated. "That's highly irregular. Please. I need enough to keep me alive while I gather more evidence. And I need you to document everything, the falsified records she showed you, the recording I made, all of it." Dr. Martinez was quiet for a moment, then picked up his prescription pad. "I'm writing you a 3-day supply of Coroner. Keep it hidden. But Eleanor, 3 days is all I'm comfortable with. After that, I'm calling the police whether you agree or not." When I returned to the waiting area, Sandra jumped up with a concerned expression. "How did it go, sweetie? You were in there so long." "Dr. Martinez wants to keep me on the metoprolol for now," I said, hating how easily the deception came. "He thinks the lower dose might be better for someone my age." Relief flickered across Sandra's face. "That's wonderful news. I told you those expensive medications were probably too strong. On the drive home, Sandra was chattier than usual, almost euphoric. You know, Eleanor, I was thinking we should update your emergency contacts. Maybe add me as a secondary contact after Lisa, just in case something happens and your daughter can't be reached immediately. Emergency contacts. Another step toward isolating me and controlling the narrative when I died. That makes sense, I agreed. You've become so important to me. And maybe we should look into getting a medical power of attorney drawn up. Just as a precaution, you understand. Sometimes families are too far away to make quick decisions. My blood ran cold. Sandra was systematically putting herself in position to control every aspect of my medical care and my death. That afternoon, while Sandra was grocery shopping, I called Lisa with an update. Mom, I've been researching Harold McKinnon's case. His daughter Emily still lives in Phoenix, and she agreed to talk to me. Lisa's voice was tight with anger. Emily said her father's behavior changed dramatically in his final months. He became increasingly confused and frail, but Sandra convinced the family it was natural aging. What happened to him exactly? Officially, heart failure. But Emily found discrepancies in his medications after he died, expensive prescriptions that had been filled but never found in his house. The family hired a private investigator, but Sandra had already moved on and changed her identity. I gripped the phone tighter. Lisa, Sandra asked about getting medical power of attorney today. I think she's accelerating whatever timeline she has planned. That's it. I'm flying down tonight. No, wait. I found out something else. She mentioned running into someone from Premier Care Services at the farmer's market this morning. Someone named Janet who knew about our arrangement. I think there might be other people involved in this. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Mom, what if this is bigger than just Sandra? What if Premier Care Services is running some kind of systematic operation to rob elderly clients? The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it made horrible sense. A referral agency would have access to detailed information about clients' finances, medications, family situations. And they could move caregivers around when things got suspicious, give them new identities, new references. I heard Sandra's car in the driveway. She's back. Lisa, call Emily McKinnon and see if her father used Premier Care Services. And find out if there were any other agencies involved. As Sandra walked through the door with grocery bags, her phone was buzzing. She answered it with her back to me, her voice low. Tomorrow night should work fine. No, she's not suspicious at all. I'll have everything cleared out by the weekend. My heart stopped. Tomorrow night. Whatever Sandra had planned for me, it was happening in less than 24 hours. She turned around, smiling brightly. Sorry about that, sweetie. Just coordinating some appointments for next week. Next week, when she expected me to be dead. Sandra, I said, forcing my voice to sound frail and confused, I've been feeling so tired lately. And sometimes my chest feels fluttery. Her eyes sharpened with interest. Really? When did this start? The past few days. Maybe the new medications are affecting me. Oh, Eleanor. She moved closer, her voice filled with fake concern. That does sound worrying. Maybe we should call Dr. Martinez. No, I don't want to bother him again. Could you just keep an eye on me tonight? I'd feel safer with you nearby. Sandra's smile was predatory. Of course, sweetie. I'll take very good care of you. I was inviting my own murderer to watch over me. But I finally had the timeline I needed to stop her. That evening, I sat in my living room watching Sandra prepare what I knew would be my final dose of medications. She hummed softly while organizing the pills, occasionally glancing at me with those caring brown eyes that had fooled me for 8 months. Here we go, Eleanor. Your evening medicines. She handed me 4 pills instead of the usual 3, 2 white tablets, 1 yellow, and a new blue capsule I'd never seen before. I palmed them all while pretending to swallow, washing down nothing with apple juice. Thank you, dear. What's the blue one? It's new. Dr. Martinez added a sleep aid. He thought it might help with your restlessness. Sandra settled into the chair across from me, closer than usual. You've been having trouble sleeping, remember? I hadn't told her about any sleep problems because I wasn't having any. But a sleep aid would explain why I'd be found unconscious in bed tomorrow morning, too heavily sedated to call for help while my untreated heart condition finally killed me. You're so thoughtful to keep track of everything, I said, letting my voice sound drowsy. I feel so safe with you here. That's exactly what Harold used to say. The word slipped out so casually that for a moment I thought I'd misheard her. Sandra's face went completely still, realizing her mistake. Harold? I asked, feigning confusion. Oh, just another client I helped transition peacefully. Don't worry about it, sweetie. But her voice had lost its warmth, becoming mechanical. You should get ready for bed. You look exhausted. My hands trembled as I stood up. Sandra was done pretending. She'd accidentally revealed her connection to Harold McKinnon, and now there was a cold calculation in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I think I'll read for a while first, I said, moving toward my bookshelf. No. Her voice was sharp, then immediately softened. I mean, you really should rest. Doctor's orders. She was herding me toward the bedroom, and I realized with growing horror that my timeline had just accelerated. Whatever Sandra had planned for tomorrow night was happening right now. I made it to my bedroom and closed the door, hands shaking as I reached for my phone. But when I looked at the nightstand, my landline was gone. I checked my purse, my cell phone was missing too. Sandra had cut off my communication with the outside world. Through my bedroom door, I could hear her moving around the house with purpose now, no longer bothering to be quiet. Drawers opening and closing, papers rustling. She was already beginning to stage the scene for tomorrow's discovery of my body. I pressed my ear to the door and heard her voice, talking on what must be her own phone. It's happening tonight instead. No, she figured out too much. I'll have everything cleaned up by morning. My heart hammered against my ribs. The sleep aid she'd tried to give me would have left me unconscious while she completed whatever she had planned. But I was awake, alert, and trapped in my own bedroom with a killer who'd already murdered at least 4 people. I looked around frantically for options. My bedroom window faced the backyard, too far from the street for neighbors to hear if I screamed. The door was my only exit, and Sandra was somewhere in the hallway. Then I remembered the voice recorder, still in my bathrobe pocket. If something happened to me tonight, at least there would be evidence. I turned it on and whispered into it, "It's 9:47 p.m. on Thursday. Sandra Williams admitted to killing Harold McKinnon. She's removed my phones and is planning to murder me tonight. She tried to give me an unidentified blue sleeping pill." Footsteps approached my door. I shoved the recorder under my mattress just as the doorknob turned. Sandra stood in my doorway, and her mask had completely fallen away. Sandra stood in my doorway, and for the first time in 8 months, I was seeing her real face. Gone was the warm, caring expression I'd grown to love. Her eyes were flat and calculating, like a predator sizing up wounded prey. "Eleanor, you really should be in bed by now. The sleep medication should be taking effect." "I'm not feeling particularly sleepy," I said, backing toward my dresser. "Maybe I could take it tomorrow night instead?" She stepped into my room and closed the door behind her. "I'm afraid that's not going to work. You see, I have a very specific timeline to maintain." My fingers found the edge of my dresser, searching for anything I could use as a weapon. "Sandra, I don't understand what you mean." "Of course you don't." Poor Eleanor with her declining memory. Her voice turned mocking. "Do you have any idea how exhausting it's been, pretending to care about your boring stories and your little routines? 8 months of playing the devoted caregiver while you treated me like some kind of beloved granddaughter." The cruelty in her words hit harder than I'd expected. Despite everything I'd discovered, part of me had still hoped there was some genuine affection between us. "You were never confused about your medications, were you?" she continued, moving closer. "That little performance at the pharmacy yesterday was quite convincing, but Margaret called Dr. Martinez, didn't she? And today's appointment ran much too long for a routine checkup." My blood went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. Eleanor, please. We're past the point of pretending." Sandra reached into her pocket and pulled out a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. "This is much more efficient than waiting for your heart condition to worsen naturally. Potassium chloride, it'll look like cardiac arrest. Very peaceful, very believable for someone your age with your medical history." I pressed my back against the dresser, mind racing. The voice recorder under my mattress was capturing everything, but that wouldn't help me if I was dead. "How many others, Sandra? How many people like Harold?" Her smile was chilling. "Harold was number 7. You're number 8, though you've definitely been the most challenging. Most of my clients are so far gone with dementia that they never notice the medication switches. But you kept those meticulous little notebooks, didn't you? Always writing everything down like the good bookkeeper you used to be." 7 people, I whispered. 7 families destroyed. 7 successful transitions, she corrected. "Do you have any idea how much money elderly people waste on medications they barely understand? I'm simply redirecting those resources to someone who can use them more efficiently." The families are usually grateful when their burden finally passes peacefully in their sleep. "Do you know how much Harold's daughter was spending on his care? $3,000 a month, not including medications. I saved her a fortune." Sandra pulled a syringe from her other pocket, began filling it from the vial. "Your daughter Lisa will be sad, of course, but she'll also be relieved. All those worried phone calls about your declining condition, all that guilt about living so far away. I've been preparing her for months." The syringe was nearly full. I estimated I had maybe 30 seconds before she was ready to inject me. "The others who died," I said desperately, trying to buy time. "Did Premier Care Services know what you were doing?" Sandra paused, looking almost amused. "Premier Care Services? Eleanor, I haven't worked for them in over a year. I've been freelancing, shall we say. Much more profitable when you don't have to share the take with an agency. But you told me. I told you what you needed to hear. Just like I told Lisa during all those weekly check-in calls that never happened. Did you really think she hired me without doing any background verification?" Sandra capped the syringe, tested it with a small squirt of liquid. "I created an entire fictional employment history, complete with references from grateful families. Amazing what you can accomplish with a good computer and some creativity." My mind reeled. If Sandra wasn't working through Premier Care Services, then Lisa had never actually hired her. "How did you get into my house? How did you know about my medical conditions, my financial situation?" "Public records, dear. Prescription databases, property tax information, social media posts from your daughter. You'd be amazed how much personal information is available if you know where to look." She moved closer, syringe ready. "I've been watching you for months before I ever knocked on your door." The calculation was breathtaking. Sandra had researched me like a predator studying prey, learning my habits, my vulnerabilities, my medical needs. Then she'd simply appeared one day, claiming Lisa had sent her. "Lisa never hired you at all. Your daughter thinks you've been managing just fine on your own. I intercepted her calls, sent emails from your account saying you were doing well. She's been completely out of the loop." Sandra grabbed my wrist. "Now hold still. This will be over quickly." I jerked away, knocking over the lamp on my dresser. It crashed to the floor, bulb shattering. "Mrs. Patterson will hear that. She'll call the police." Sandra laughed. "Mrs. Patterson is in Florida visiting her son. Has been for 2 weeks. I made sure to check everyone's schedules before tonight." She lunged for me again, and I stumbled backward, my hip hitting the corner of my bed frame. Pain shot through my side, but adrenaline kept me moving. I had to get to the door, had to get out of this room. But Sandra was younger, stronger, and she was between me and my only exit. The syringe glinted in the overhead light as she raised it, and I realized I was about to become victim number 8 in a killing spree that nobody even knew was happening. The syringe was inches from my arm when I heard the sound that saved my life, Lisa's voice calling from the front door. "Mom? I'm here. I caught an earlier flight." Sandra froze, the needle hovering above my wrist. Her face went through a series of expressions, surprise, rage, then calculating coldness. "You called her," Sandra hissed. "When?" "I didn't," I whispered, genuinely shocked. But Lisa's voice was getting closer, footsteps moving through the house. "Mom? Where are you?" I used the spare key from under the planter. Sandra's grip tightened on the syringe. If you make a sound, I'll inject you and tell your daughter I found you having a heart attack. She'll thank me for trying to save you. Eleanor? Mom? Lisa's voice was right outside my bedroom door now. Sandra pressed the needle against my arm, not quite piercing the skin. Act normal, she breathed in my ear. Tell her you're fine and she should go to a hotel tonight. The bedroom door opened, and Lisa stepped in, my beautiful, brilliant daughter who I hadn't seen in 4 months. But her expression immediately shifted from relief to alarm as she took in the scene, Sandra holding my wrist, me pressed against the dresser with broken glass at my feet, both of us frozen in an unnatural tableau. What's going on here? Lisa's voice was sharp, suspicious. Sandra's demeanor changed instantly, the caring mask sliding back into place. Oh, Lisa. What a wonderful surprise. Your mother had a little fall, knocked over her lamp. I was just checking to make sure she didn't cut herself on the glass. But Lisa's eyes were taking in details Sandra hadn't considered, the syringe partially hidden in Sandra's other hand, my terrified expression, the fact that we were both fully dressed at nearly 10 p.m. Mom, are you hurt? Lisa stepped closer, and I saw Sandra's grip shift on the syringe. This was it. I could stay quiet, let Sandra maintain her deception, and hope my daughter would somehow figure out what was happening before it was too late. Or I could risk both our lives by telling the truth. Lisa, run. The words came out as barely a whisper. She's trying to kill me. Sandra moved fast, but Lisa moved faster. My daughter had always been athletic, played soccer through college, and her reflexes were sharp. She grabbed Sandra's wrist, the one holding the syringe, and twisted hard. Sandra yelped, dropping the needle, but she wasn't giving up. Lisa, your mother is having delusions. The dementia is getting worse, she's been paranoid and aggressive all evening. My mother doesn't have progressive dementia, Lisa said, her voice deadly calm while maintaining her grip on Sandra's wrist. I called her doctor yesterday. Her cognitive function has been stable for over a year. Sandra's eyes widened. She'd been caught in another lie. Lisa continued, I also called Premier Care Services. They've never heard of Sandra Williams. In fact, they flagged your name as a person of interest in several client deaths. The room went completely still. Sandra's face strained of color as she realized her entire operation was unraveling. Harold McKinnon's daughter Emily gave me very detailed information about her father's final months, Lisa pressed on, still holding Sandra immobile. Including photographs of his caregiver. The same woman who's been living in my mother's house under false pretenses. Sandra suddenly wrenched free and dove for the fallen syringe, but Lisa was ready. She kicked it under the dresser, well out of reach. Mom, get behind me, Lisa ordered. And tell me you recorded some of this conversation. I thought of the voice recorder hidden under my mattress, capturing every word of Sandra's confession. Every detail I managed. Sandra's expression turned absolutely feral as she realized she was trapped. And that's when she pulled out a second syringe. You think you're so clever, Sandra snarled, brandishing the second syringe like a weapon. Both of you. But you have no idea how deep this goes. Lisa positioned herself between Sandra and me, her phone already in her hand. I'm calling 911 right now. Go ahead. By the time they get here, you'll both be dead, and I'll be long gone with Eleanor's identity documents and bank cards. Sandra's voice had turned completely cold, businesslike. I'd done this before when family members got too curious. My heart stopped. You've killed family members? Harold's son David flew in from Denver, asking too many questions about his father's medications. He had an unfortunate accident in his hotel room, apparently mixed his anxiety medication with alcohol. Very sad, very believable. Lisa's face went white, but her voice stayed steady. The police are already on their way. I called them before I came inside. Sandra laughed, but there was hysteria creeping into it. No, you didn't. You're bluffing, just like your mother tried to do. Lisa, I whispered urgently, there are more victims. She said Harold was number 7. I'm supposed to be number 8. And there would have been many more, Sandra said, circling us like a predator. Do you know how easy it is to identify targets? Elderly people living alone, adult children who live far away, expensive medication regimens. I had a whole database of potential clients. Lisa was frantically typing on her phone with one hand while keeping her eyes on Sandra. Mom, where are your phones? I tried calling before I came in. She took them. Cut off all communication. I pressed closer to Lisa's back, feeling safer with my daughter between me and Sandra. Smart girl, Eleanor. Too smart for your own good. Sandra raised the syringe. This was supposed to be clean, peaceful. But now it's going to look like a home invasion gone wrong. Tragic elderly woman and her visiting daughter, victims of random violence. Except it won't be random, Lisa said. I already sent emails to 3 different people with Sandra's real name, her photo, and details about Harold McKinnon's case. If anything happens to us tonight, the police will know exactly where to start looking. For the first time, Sandra looked genuinely rattled. You're lying. Emily McKinnon in Phoenix. Detective Rodriguez with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department. And my husband David, who's a federal prosecutor in Seattle. Lisa's voice was steady, authoritative. I've been building a case file for the past 2 days. Sandra's grip on the syringe wavered. That's impossible. You didn't even know about me until yesterday. I knew something was wrong when Mom mentioned medication changes that didn't make medical sense. I've been researching suspicious deaths connected to home healthcare workers for months. Lisa slowly reached into her jacket pocket. And I've been recording this entire conversation. She pulled out her phone, and I could see the voice memo app was indeed running, 43 minutes and counting. Sandra stared at the phone, then at Lisa, then at me. The calculation in her eyes was terrifying as she weighed her options. You want to know the truth, she said finally. I could have stopped after Harold. I had enough money to disappear permanently. But it became addicting, the power, the control, watching families grieve for people who trusted me completely. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. Sandra had continued killing not for money, but for the thrill of betrayal. 7 families, I whispered. 7 people who loved you. They loved who I pretended to be. Just like you did, Eleanor. She smiled, and it was the most chilling expression I'd ever seen. Right up until tonight, you still hoped I cared about you, didn't you? Before I could answer, we heard the sound that changed everything, sirens in the distance, getting closer. Sandra's face twisted with rage. You did call them. Lisa smiled grimly. I texted 911 from my phone 20 minutes ago. They should be pulling up right about now. Through my bedroom window, red and blue lights were already flashing in my driveway. Sandra looked at the syringe in her hand, then at us, then at the approaching sirens. Her shoulders sagged as she realized her 8-victim killing spree was finally over. This isn't how it was supposed to end, she said quietly. No, I replied, thinking of Harold and the 6 others. It was supposed to end a long time ago. The police sirens were getting louder, but Sandra wasn't giving up. She backed toward my bedroom window, syringe still in hand, her eyes darting between Lisa and me like a cornered animal. You think this is over? Sandra's voice had turned eerily calm. I have backups for everything. Alternative identities, offshore accounts, contacts in 3 different states. Lisa kept her phone recording while slowly moving us toward the bedroom door. Mom, stay close to me. There are others like me, Eleanor, Sandra continued, her voice taking on an almost conversational tone that was somehow more terrifying than her earlier rage. Did you really think I was working alone? Martha Rodriguez in Tampa, Jennifer Walsh in Portland, David Kim in Denver. We share information, best practices, target identification, disposal methods. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just one serial killer, it was an entire network. You're lying, Lisa said, but I could hear uncertainty creeping into her voice. Martha specializes in diabetic clients, insulin overdoses are so easy to disguise. Jennifer prefers clients with multiple prescriptions, more opportunities for profitable switches. And David, well, he handles the ones with difficult family members. Sandra's smile was predatory. Like Harold's son. The sirens were right outside now, car door slamming. But Sandra seemed oddly relaxed, as if she'd accepted something we hadn't realized yet. Sandra Williams was never my real name, she said, pulling out her phone with her free hand. Neither was Susan Valdez or Sarah Ward. My actual identity is buried under so many layers that even I sometimes forget who I started as. She was typing rapidly on her phone while talking, the syringe still poised in her other hand. I'm sending a message to my network right now. Warning them about increased scrutiny, telling them to accelerate their timelines. Lisa lunged forward, trying to grab the phone, but Sandra was ready. She swung the syringe toward my daughter's arm, and I watched in horror as the needle grazed Lisa's sleeve. Lisa. I screamed, but my daughter had already spun away, the fabric tearing but her skin intact. Heavy footsteps were pounding up my front steps now. Police. Open up. In here. Lisa shouted toward the bedroom door. Back bedroom. She's armed. Sandra laughed, a sound devoid of any sanity. Armed? This little thing? She held up the syringe. Do you know what's in here, Eleanor? The same potassium chloride that stopped Harold's heart. And Dorothy Vance's. And Maria Santos's. She was confessing to everything now, her voice carrying clearly to Lisa's phone recording. Eugene Foster fought harder than the others, took 3 injections before his heart finally gave out. But sweet Dorothy just went to sleep and never woke up. My bedroom door burst open, and 2 uniformed officers rushed in, weapons drawn. Drop it. Drop the weapon now. Sandra looked at the officers, then at the syringe, then at me. 8 months, Eleanor. 8 months of listening to your stories about your dead husband, your boring garden club meetings, your precious granddaughter's piano recitals. Do you have any idea how much I hated every minute of it? Drop the syringe and put your hands up. Officer Martinez, I could see his nameplate, stepped closer, his partner flanking to the right. The medication switches were just the beginning, Sandra continued, as if the officers weren't there. I've been documenting your daily routines, your banking habits, your security codes. Everything needed to assume your identity after your unfortunate passing. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket with her phone hand, still keeping the syringe raised. Your social security number, your mother's maiden name, the answers to all your security questions. I know more about Eleanor Chen than Eleanor Chen does. Lisa was pale but still recording. How long have you been planning this? Since before I ever knocked on your door. I spent 6 weeks researching Eleanor, her medical history, her prescription costs, her relationship with you. Sandra's voice turned mocking. Did you know your mother mentioned you exactly 47 times in our first week together? How proud she was of her daughter the lawyer, how worried she was about being a burden from so far away. The words hit me like physical blows. Every personal detail I'd shared, every moment of vulnerability, had been catalogued and used against me. Officer Martinez stepped closer. Ma'am, this is your final warning. Drop the weapon. Sandra looked directly at me, her expression suddenly, terrifyingly tender, the same look that had fooled me for 8 months. Goodbye, Eleanor, she whispered. And then she drove the syringe toward her own neck. Officer Martinez moved like lightning, tackling Sandra before the syringe could reach her neck. The needle went flying across the room, hitting my dresser mirror and shattering it into a spider web of cracks. No. Sandra screamed, thrashing against the officer's grip. You don't understand. I can't go to prison. I know too much about the others. Lisa immediately stepped forward, her phone still recording. The others? You mean your network? Officer Martinez's partner, Officer Davis, was already calling for backup while searching Sandra for additional weapons. Ma'am, you mentioned accomplices. We're going to need names and locations. Sandra's demeanor shifted again, this time to desperate bargaining. I'll tell you everything, but I need protection. Martha Rodriguez in Tampa, she's planning something for this weekend. An elderly man named Robert Chen. My heart stopped. Chen? That's my maiden name. Your cousin Robert, Sandra said, her voice taking on an urgent tone as Officer Martinez secured her hands behind her back. I gave Martha your family information months ago. She's been researching your relatives, identifying other potential targets. Lisa grabbed my arm. Mom, do you have a cousin Robert in Florida? I nodded numbly. My brother's son. He's 73, lives alone since Aunt Helen died. He has diabetes and heart problems. Sandra smiled despite being handcuffed. Martha's probably with him right now, gaining his trust, organizing his medications. She works faster than I do, less sentimental about building relationships. Officer Davis spoke into his radio. Dispatch, we need immediate contact with Tampa PD for a welfare check. Possible elderly abuse in progress. You're too late, Sandra said. Martha's timeline is much more aggressive than mine. 72 hours from first contact to completion. She's probably been with Robert since Tuesday. Lisa calculated quickly. That means today is his final day, Sandra finished. Unless she can get Tampa police to his house in the next few hours. I felt sick. While I've been fighting for my own life, my nephew was 3 states away facing the same nightmare. Officer Martinez pulled Sandra to her feet. You're going to give us every name, every location, every detail about this network. Am I? Sandra's voice turned calculating again. What's in it for me? Life in prison instead of the death penalty? The satisfaction of knowing you stopped other families from going through what we did, Lisa said firmly. Or you can watch more innocent people die while you rot in a cell. Sandra considered this, her head tilted like she was solving a math problem. David Kim in Denver is targeting a retired professor named William Martinez, your officer's surname, how ironic. Jennifer Walsh in Portland has 3 active cases running simultaneously. And there's a new recruit in Austin that Martha's been training. Officer Davis was writing frantically while coordinating with dispatch. We need contact with Denver PD, Portland Police, and Austin. Multiple elderly abuse cases in progress. The Austin recruit goes by Tommy Chin, Sandra continued, seemingly enjoying the chaos she was creating. Another one of your relatives, Eleanor. Your great-nephew from California. 28 years old, seemed like such a nice young man when he contacted me 6 months ago asking about career opportunities. I staggered backward, Lisa catching my arm. Tommy? My nephew David's son? But he's a nursing student, he would never. Financial pressures can change people, Sandra said with mock sympathy. Student loans, credit card debt, medical school applications. I offered him a way to make $50,000 in 3 months. The scope of betrayal kept expanding. Not only had Sandra infiltrated my family's information, she'd recruited one of my own relatives to continue her work. Lisa was already dialing her phone. I'm calling David right now. We need to warn him about Tommy. You might want to ask David about his father-in-law too, Sandra added casually. Elderly gentleman in Sacramento, recently widowed, expensive medication regimen. Tommy's been visiting him weekly for the past month, helping organize his pills. Officer Martinez looked grimmer by the moment. How many active cases are we talking about? Sandra pretended to think. Current targets? Maybe 15 across 6 states. But the network's been operating for 3 years, we probably completed over 40 successful transitions. 40 people. 40 families destroyed by this network of killers masquerading as caregivers. The beautiful thing about our system, Sandra continued as Officer Davis read her rights, is that we share intelligence. Medical databases, financial records, family connections. When I researched Eleanor, I also identified 12 other potential targets in her extended family network. Lisa's face went white. 12? Oh yes. Your husband's elderly father in Portland, Jennifer's already made contact. Your mother-in-law's sister in Phoenix, that's Martha's territory. Even your own daughter Emma will make an excellent target in about 40 years, assuming she inherits Eleanor's medical conditions. The calculation was breathtaking and horrifying. They weren't just killing isolated elderly people, they were systematically hunting entire family lines across generations. As the officers led Sandra toward my bedroom door, she turned back to me one final time. Eleanor, you should know, everything I told you about caring for you, about you becoming like family to me? That part was actually true. I stared at her, not understanding. You reminded me of my own grandmother, Sandra said softly. The first person I ever killed. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sandra had murdered her own grandmother, the person who should have been safest with her, most loved by her. The casual way she admitted it, as if it were just another business transaction, showed me the true depth of her evil. My grandmother raised me after my parents died, Sandra continued as Officer Martinez tried to lead her away. She had a beautiful house in Sarasota, a healthy bank account, and an unfortunate heart condition. I was 19 and drowning in college debt. She smiled that same tender expression I'd fallen for so completely. Grandmother trusted me with everything, her medications, her finances, her final wishes. Just like you did, Eleanor. That's enough, Officer Martinez said firmly, but Sandra kept talking. The inheritance paid off my student loans and gave me the seed money to start this operation. Grandmother would be so proud to know she helped me build a successful business. Lisa stepped forward, her phone still recording. A business built on murdering people who loved you. A business built on efficiency, Sandra corrected. Do you know how much money is wasted on keeping elderly people alive when they're ready to go? I'm providing a service. Officer Davis was coordinating with multiple police departments through his radio, but I caught fragments. Tampa PD is en route to Robert Chen's address. Denver police have William Martinez in protective custody. Portland found Jennifer Walsh's apartment empty, suspect fled. Some of Sandra's network was escaping. You're too late for most of them, Sandra said, reading my expression. Martha's probably halfway to Mexico by now. David Kim never stays in one city longer than 6 months. And Jennifer, well, she has resources you can't imagine. As they reached my bedroom doorway, Sandra stopped and looked back at me one final time. Eleanor, check your bank accounts. All of them. My blood went cold. What did you do? I've been moving small amounts for months, $50 here, $100 there. Nothing large enough to trigger alerts. But it adds up. Her smile was triumphant. I estimate I transferred about $43,000 to various offshore accounts. Lisa was already pulling up my banking information on her phone. Her face went pale as she scrolled through months of transactions. Mom, she's right. Look at this, dozens of small withdrawals, online transfers, automatic payments to accounts I don't recognize. The beauty of identity theft, Sandra said as Officer Martinez finally forced her into the hallway, is that by the time you notice, the money's been laundered through 6 different countries. But as they led her away, I realized something that made me smile for the first time in hours. Sandra, you made one crucial mistake. She paused, curious despite herself. I spent 43 years as a bookkeeper. I balanced my accounts every single week, down to the penny. I pulled out the small notebook I always carried. I have records of every fraudulent transaction you made, with dates and amounts. My bank will reverse every transfer. Sandra's confident expression faltered. That's impossible. The money's already been moved through accounts that are now evidence in a federal crime, Lisa interrupted. My husband prosecutes financial crimes, remember? Those offshore transfers? They're going to lead investigators directly to your entire network. For the first time all evening, Sandra looked genuinely afraid. 3 hours later, I sat at my kitchen table with Lisa, Detective Morrison, and Agent Williams from the FBI Financial Crimes Division. My voice recorder, still running under my mattress until Lisa retrieved it, had captured Sandra's complete confession, including names and locations of her accomplices. Mrs. Chen, your recordings and financial records are going to help us shut down the largest elder abuse network we've ever encountered, Agent Williams said. We've already recovered Robert Chen safely in Tampa and arrested Martha Rodriguez. Lisa squeezed my hand. Mom, you probably saved dozens of lives tonight. I looked around my kitchen, the same room where Sandra had prepared countless meals while systematically poisoning and robbing me. Tomorrow, I would change every lock, every password, every security code. I would install cameras and hire legitimate help through verified agencies. But tonight, I was alive, my daughter was safe, and Sandra Williams, whatever her real name was, would never hurt another family. The pharmacist had asked a simple question, your medication was changed? That question saved my life and exposed a killer.